everybody, to our July meeting. We'll kick off with we'll come through the apologies when we do the roll call, I suppose, but I know we do have one guest, and his name's Laurie Rose. Laurie, be good enough to stand up so everybody can just greet you. Put a round of applause for Laurie. Welcome to you, mate, and hopefully it's the first of many occasions that we see you in Probus. Are there any other guests or visiting members from other clubs? No, okay. Birthdays. Do any birthdays?
91 yesterday.
Brian, 91 yesterday.
Brian, 91 yesterday. Magnificent. Anybody else? Doesn't look like it. Okay. Anniversaries or special occasions? 21st? No? Okay. We don't have any new members to induct today, so without further ado, I'll ask our immediate past president, our current vice president, and our nuts and bolts man, who just seems to slide in everywhere when we need him. David, do the roll call, please, David.
Thank you, Mr. President. Rob Adams.
No appearance, Your Honour.
No, you won't see him anymore, I don't think.
Okay. Peter Bedford.
Yeah.
Noel Benton. Bertie the Berryman.
Yes.
Our video wizard, Bruce Bazant.
Yes.
Philip Carter. Michael the Magpie Doherty. Present. Len Edwards.
Yes.
Robbie the Urbacher.
Not all here.
No.
John Doherty is here.
Another magpie.
Alan Evans.
Present.
Brian, 91-year-old fit. Nick Francis.
Apology.
Bob Frencham. I'm going to call Noel just to remind us about our great friend Noel, but we'll put him down as an apology. He's battling. Noel Griffith. Frank Henning.
Present.
Benny Hill. Sorry, Dr. Bob Hill.
Apology, video.
As he's twin.
He's an apology.
Yep.
He's very funny, Benny Hill, wasn't he?
Yeah,
Very rude boy.
Detlef Hingst.
Present.
John Horsfall.
Apology.
Apology for John. Reg Jackson. Here. I'm here. Joe Lansberg.
An apology in New South Wales.
David Lunn.
Present.
Brian McMahon.
Apology for Brian.
John, expert on roads, Metcalf.
Yeah.
The Roadrunner.
The Road Runner. Gary the Wanderer Packworth.
Yeah. I'm still wandering. I'm still wandering.
Philandering.
Graeme Ratten.
Yep.
Kevin the Roy Boy Ryan.
Yep.
Will Semler.
Apology.
Gosh, Townsville.
Surfing. Surfing.
No doubt about it. Surfing, yeah.
It's unbelievable. Caught him at the flight centre in Ivanhoe.
Our esteemed secretary and person who makes everything happen, Colin Styles.
Yeah.
David Taylor.
Yeah.
Les Sterling.
Yep.
Heath Papa.
Present.
David Durasek.
Yeah.
Sorry, Livio Durasek. Sorry, Livio. And I read it wrongly. Andy Walsh,
Apology.
the Very Reverend Ian Williamson, present.
Good to see you back there.
Ted Breer.
Present.
That's it, Mr. President. Pretty good roll call.
Yep, thank you.
Good roll call.
Yep. I think now that he's been here for a few meetings, we might promote Ted Bree from Z to B. Might elevate you, mate. You might have pole position if Mr. Adams is not coming anymore. You've swept around the field and landed on the post in front.
He comes before Z.
That's right, exactly right. We've got some reports, but I just thought there's a couple of things in terms of activities. I'll just jump in before Colin says something. I've been trying to organise a couple of things. One is a visit to the committee. Had a meeting last meeting, and we decided that for those who are keen, that we would visit B Division of Old Pensioners Jail on the 27th of August. Now, the visit would occupy about an hour and a half of your time, and for those who are keen, there's a cafe on site that we could have a bite to eat afterwards. I don't think we have a sheet for it.
Yes, we do.
We do. Oh, well, good. Excellent.
Sheet on that round table there. We have a sheet on the round table there for the Pentridge trip on the 27th of August, and also a sheet out there for going to the Templestowe pub with David Jones hosting on, and drinking most, on the 24th of September.
Fantastic. Oh, well, yeah, the Secretary's head of the game has been at it again. Wonderful, thank you. In anticipation, I tried to book some tickets in June, and the website wouldn't allow me to do that. I had to wait until July to book tickets for July, August, September. And when I came to book the tickets, the people issuing the tickets want to know the names of each of the visitors. So I couldn't put Billy Bloggs, and I thought, well, I'll wait to this meeting just to remind members, if you're keen to go to have a tour of B Division, it's a fascinating and yet macabre sort of place, and you probably will watch television shows about people in prison and that sort of thing. But look, if that's you're interested in that sort of thing, I know David's been there, and in my work as a magistrate, I've been through the old Pentridge jail and so forth, and it is a fascinating place and full of stories. And if you're interested in history, it'd be well worth a visit. And of course, there's no convicted felons in there, so it's pretty safe. So I'll give that for your attention today to have a think about that. And if you're keen to write your name down, we probably still have, if you want to think about it, we probably even have time at our next meeting, if you're not sure your whereabouts, to put your name down. But it'd be great if we had a pretty good idea today, and I can go up and let's book those tickets.
Mr. President?
Yes.
I visited there in 1952. I was teaching at Kew Cottages, and we were wanting to teach the boys there how to make doormats. And I went to learn from the inmates how to do it. And the ones who were involved in the mat shop were those who wouldn't be bothered going anywhere else to learn anything else. And it was a bit fearsome because all of the strings are up like this, and they're weaving through, and then they have a machete which they each one in. Anyway, it was interesting that while I was there, they brought in a government job, which was a doormat to be repaired, ER, which was way back from about 1910, and had been sent in for repair. So there you go.
There you go. All the way from London, Elizabeth Regina, undoubtedly. I think they used to They used to make number plates
Yeah,
now.
number
Yeah,
plates.
yeah.
And if you wanted a personalised plate and it didn't come out exactly as you wanted it, you were a bold man who'd go back and just complain about it. The other trip that I'll just give advance notice of in October, if we can. I've been in touch with the MCG. They run tours of the MCG, which take about an hour. And there's also a tour of the Australian Sporting Museum, and some of our members might have already been to that.
Yeah,
I've not
been
been
a few
to it.
years ago.
I'm told it's a ripping presentation.
Very
It's
good.
very good if you're involved in sport, like to see sport at the elite level and what people have been involved in, that sort of thing. And that's proposed for late October. I think it's October 29. Now, I've been in touch with them, and they've come back to me and said, thanks for your inquiry. We'll get back to you because we're still settling on dates for late October. And they also wanted to know whether we'd be interested, so just something to think about. In the committee room, some of you, the food people will be aware of Guy Grossi, only known by name, only reputation, but he apparently runs a lunch in the committee room, and that can follow, for those who might be keen about that, the tour of the MCG and also the Australian Institute of Sport Museum. So look, just let you know, give you some advance warning about that, but if you're able to move in relation to the Pentridge visit today, that'd make life a whole lot easier for the committee who are organising it. Having said that, that's all I want to say about that. Colin, can we hear from you, please?
Right. Our membership is now 38. Ron Speechley thought it not cracked for him to come, so he sent an email to him thanking him for his marvellous contribution. The trip to the Russian Orthodox Church was fantastic. Thanks, Robert. We had about 12 to 13 people there. That was fantastic. For the mob afterwards, going to the East Brunswick Hotel is an upmarket pub, and I highly recommend it. If you get a chance to go to the East Brunswick Hotel, I'd go there. The book club is book exchange today, and that's about all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Colin.
John.
Kevin, the Rob Roy Ryan, I think, our treasurer.
Yeah. We've got just under $2,000 in the bank, to be accurate, $1,983.30. All the members' subs are in, and I don't expect too much activity on that account in the coming months.
Thanks, Kevin. Dr. Ratten.
I've had contact with a number of members by telephone over the months. Bob Hill, Ian Williamson, it's good to see you here today, Ian. Noel Griffith and Andy Watts have been unable to raise Ron Speechley. His phone's not. All of those people are as they were. There's nothing new about them.
Yeah. No, thanks, Graeme. Well, I think as we know, no, I haven't forgotten it. Yeah. About the same time as John Parry Jones told us he was leaving, Ron Speechley gave us a letter to the same effect that it's a bit too hard for him to continue. And the committee have been in touch with Ron through our secretary and thanked him and John for their participation in the club. And if they ever get the opportunity to come back, we welcome them back with open arms. But so the committee have moved in relation to that. We won't see Ron Speechley for the foreseeable future. Okay, well that brings us to Members' Corner. I think, Graeme, you're presenting this morning.
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
All right, so I'll call upon you if I may.
We have singing after members. We have singing after members' corner.
Yeah. Oh, before we do that, sorry, Gary.
That's okay.
Sorry, you threw me. Sorry, Graeme. Activities. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Just got a little thing. I went out to Group Loop yesterday to pay for the trip where I'm going away in September, October, and they've also got another trip up for 4 days. I've got to put some glasses on there to read. They're going to Bright for 4 days, from the 11th to the 14th of November. It's only for 4 days. I've been on this particular trip, but I'm going to go back again because it's really good. It's about 15 years since I was there. The cost is $1,390 per person, twin share, and an extra $204 for single supplement. Okay. Now, if you want to go, just ring Group Link. I'm getting Bruce to send this around to everybody in email so that you'll be able to see it. Okay, if you want to go. Just give them a ring and you'll be able to do it. But it's a good trip, it's worth going, and it's quite an inexpensive trip to go away for 4 days. And it just about covers everything. I think there's only 2 lunches that you've got to buy for yourself, everything else is covered. So it's really good. Okay, that's all, John.
Yeah, good on you, thank you, Gary.
Well, I got one here if you want to pick it up, okay?
Thanks, guys. Just a reminder to all the members too, if you hear different trips that are going on, or you've been on a trip, or you think something would be of value, just let any of the committee members know, myself or David or Graeme or whoever the case may be, just something so we can toss it around at our committee meetings and plan into the future. Okay, having said that, Graeme, sorry, round 2.
Right.
Here's your easy.
Now,
Sure, what do with that?
Well, you can jump on
the
it.
output from your player.
Okay, so I'll just talk louder.
I put it on there, sorry.
All right? Sit down there. Put that on there. Is that right? Good morning, gentlemen
Morning.
and lady. The first test match was played in 1877 at the Melbourne Cricket Ground between Australia and England, and Australia won by 45 runs. There are now 12 test cricket playing nations recognised by the International Cricket Control Board. Since 1877 there have been more than 2,500 test matches, and 2 of those have ended in a tie. The tie occurring when both teams have completed 2 innings and the aggregate of the 2 innings is the same for each team. The first of these was in Brisbane in 1960 between Australia and the West Indies, and the second was in Chennai between Australia and India. I'd like to talk a little bit about the tie test in Brisbane in 1960. This was a pretty important match because it was the first of a series of 5 test matches with the touring team from West Indies, and the previous test matches had been against, the previous cycle of test matches had been against England, and they'd been pretty negative. So people were a bit cheesed off with the way cricket was being played, and they wanted some brighter cricket. The West Indies had toured Australia twice before, and those tours hadn't been very successful. And the third thing that was important was that this was the first first West Indian team which had been captained by a coloured man, Frank Worrell. So that was the setup when they gathered in Brisbane in December of 1960. Now the teams were pretty good, particularly strong in the batting area. The Australian team openers were Colin McDonald and Bob Simpson, followed by Neil Harvey, Norm O'Neill, Les Faffel, Slasher Mackay, Alan Davidson, Richie Benno, who was the captain, Wally Grout, Ian Metcalfe and Lindsay Klein. That was the Australian team. The West Indian team, the openers were Conrad Hunt and Cammy Smith, followed by Rowan Canai, Garfield Sobers, Frank Worrell, who was captain, Joe Solomon, Peter Lashley, Jerry Alexander, Sonny Ramadan, Wes Hall and Alf Valentine. So they were pretty strong batting teams, and maybe not quite so strong in the bowling areas. The West Indies won the toss
and decided to bat on a good wicket. And they made 453 runs. The standout performances being Sobers, who made 132, and Alan Davidson, who took 5 for 135. Australia replied with 505, Norm O'Neill making 181 and Bob Simpson 92, and the main wicket taker was Wes Hall, who took 4 for 140. In their second innings, the West Indies made 284, with only Canai and Worrell passing 50 runs. Alan Davidson had a great game and he took 6 for 87, which gave him an aggregate of 11 for 222 for the match. The innings was completed after 40 minutes of play on day 5. And now that meant that Australia had to make 233 runs to win and at a rate of 45 runs an hour on a pitch that was still good. So they were thought to be in a good position. Then they had an initial collapse, Australia being 2 for 7, and then they lost a couple more wickets and were 4 for 49, with Wes Hall taking all 4 of those wickets. Worrell and Ramadan each took a wicket, and Australia were then 6 for 92 and in deep trouble. Alan Davidson made 80, having had bowled so well. He made 80 runs before being run out by a marvellous throw from the boundary by Joe Solomon. And Benno was not out on 52. And at 5:45, that's a quarter of an hour before stumps, Australia were 7 for 227, needing 6 runs to win, with 3 wickets intact. Worrell called on Hall, his strike bowler, to bowl what was going to be the last over. And I'd like to play a recording now of Wes Hall, who makes a few comments about the match, and then he tells the story of bowling that last over, ball by ball. So if this machine will work, you'll hear it.
Bowl the last over, please.
Now, do you want?
Yeah, we might put this, get this to go and put this up close and we'll see what happens.
Okay.
This is experimental. A bit like Wes Hall's last over. We're not too sure what's going to happen.
Right. Now play.
I think that recording came from the same time frame.
Yeah, that's a good depends.
Very interesting program this morning. We've got a cricket comedy special. 2 items to be featured. The first addressed by Wes Hall, a special cricket dinner in New Zealand not so long ago. The second, the after speech given by Humphrey Tilling to the 40 Club in London on the occasion of their Silver Jubilee. The first item, the great West Indies fast bowler Wes Hall talking about the tight test match in Brisbane in December 1960.
You may all recall that as we went into the last day, Australia was given 238 runs to win just after lunch. And as we walked out, Sir Frank Worrell, that great man, said to me, Winfield, he always called me Winfield, today is the day. Today is the day that you will show them what you can do. And always ready to accept a challenge. I said, Skipper, if you feel so, just keep your eyes on me, and you'll see. And as we went out, Australia slumped dramatically to 40 for 4, and just happened to be lucky enough to be around and collected those 4. Then, miraculously, Captain Richie Beno and Alan Davidson seemed to tend the tide. They batted beautifully, and when Davidson departed, Australia had a mere 30 to get. to Captain Benno marshal his forces. And by the end, well, by 5:45 that day, Frank Worrell called me up and he said, "Wes," I said, "today is the day." And I said, "And I told you to keep your eyes on me." 15 minutes to go, and 1 over to go. As far as I'm concerned, it had to be 1 over. If it was less than 1 over, it meant we were beaten. So 1 over it would be. And the first ball I bowled to Wally Grout, hit him in the groin, and he wasn't interested in a run, no doubt. But Benno was captain and he called, and he who pays the piper calls the tune. And Grout hobbled through like a broken down trotter and collected 1 run. And the second ball, Benno played neatly backward or square and tried to get a run. The ball was thrown to me only about a centimetre from the wicket, and Brilliant Hall chose to throw the ball rather than just take off the bail. And so Benno survived to fight another day. And the third ball, well, that brought some comment from the captain. He said, "I'm watching you." And he said, "Now look here, Winfield. Bright will be hooking you, so make sure he hooks a Yorker." And as I ran up, I decided that all I would do was to pitch the ball up. And I eventually did. I managed it. And Brout's bat was all up here, and then suddenly he had to get down there. And the ball somehow took the edge and went straight up to the heavens. There were 13 people up there who could take that catch. The wicketkeeper had on gloves. The slits were there. Back was short leg. The ball went rather short of mid-wicket. And as I bowled the ball and ended up 2 yards from the batsman, I thought, well, let's have a go at this. And I took off, not seeing Kenai in my path, completely knocked him over as he just waited to get the ball. The ball hit my hands and ricocheted another 20 yards, so I had to go for that too. In all the confusion, I just said, "The good Lord has gone and left us." Kenai said some things that were not printable then, and are not printable now. But I must say it was not complimentary to my mother and father. Well, as I told you, the over took 15 minutes. The captain called me. He said, "Vincent, I'm still watching you." He said, "But whatever you do now, do not bowl a bouncer to Richie Benno." I said, "Okay, skipper, you just watch me." And I walked back, still very hurt at the shame, the scandal of dropping that catch. My teammates were telling me, "We always knew you can't even catch a cold." But as I walked back, I had other things in mind. I became very purposeful. I felt if I could only just get this man now, 4.5 million people in the West Indies would really come away. And since it was only 3:30 in the morning, that would have been a good achievement. So I turned, looked around, fingered my cross, prayed a little prayer, pulled up my trousers and took off. God was merciful because as I pounded the turf after bowling for 4 hours, I found that there was a little pep in my step and there was a little spring in my heels. So I said, hey, let's go, Benno. Forgetting all that the captain had said, and bowled the fastest bouncer that I've ever bowled in my life. Then I was seemingly surprised. Shit for the hook was too late. Alas, it took the glove, and there was Alexander triumphantly in the air, taking the catch and rolling over in great triumph. I swung round, my arms upraised, going towards my captain, hoping he will embrace me. But all I got was a stony silence and a wicked stare. So I said, "He's out, skipper, he's out." He said, "What did I tell you?" I said, "He's out, he's out." And then the joke was no more. He said, "Do you really understand what would have happened had that ball taken the top edge and gone for 4 runs?" For the first time in 12 minutes, I remembered that Australia needed 4 to win. So there again, in deep despair, a batsman out, but still no joy. As the new batsman came into bat, Heath was his name. He took guard, a monumental rabbit. Surely he would not be able to stand the test of time as I lived in. But my spirit was broken. How could you expect a man to get a wicket and yet be admonished by his captain? And as I walked in meekly, I bowled just as meekly, and Heath hit it just as sweetly to the mid-wicket boundary seemingly. He ran 1, he ran 2, they ran 3. The ball went right to the boundary, about I would say a metre away, and there was Comrade Hunt, not giving up, chasing all the way, picking up the ball this meter from the boundary and throwing it with remarkable accuracy back to the wicketkeeper, who did not have to move a centimetre. He took the ball and stumped, and there was Bright, sprawled out on the ground and 2 yards out of his crease. So another man was out, and Sir Frank Wolf came up to me and said, "You've got 1 ball to go." I said, "I know." He said, "And I'm watching you." And I said, "I know." And he said, "And what is more, the umpire is watching you too." So I did not understand what he was saying, so I said to him, "What are you saying?" He said, "Well, listen, 1 ball to go, and if you bowl a no ball, you will never be able to land in Barbados again." It was then that I saw the predicament I was in. And at that stage, Frank Worrell, as cunning as he is, called me over as I made my way back, and he says, "I have nothing to tell you. But the problem is that batsman doesn't know that I have nothing to tell you." So, if I move the man at backwards square leg 2 feet to the right, and then 2 feet to the left, he wouldn't know that I had nothing to tell you. So he did just that. There was Solomon, 2 feet to the right, and then 2 feet to the left. And I made my last lonesome trek back 40 yards away from the stump. As I came in, gulping for air, and pressing through for the last ball, my feet planted some 3 yards behind the crease, just in case we had a benevolent Australian umpire. And so Klein turned the ball backward of clear. It looked like an easy run. It was really, until Solomon, little Joe Solomon, moved smartly to his left, picked up the ball, and with just 1 stump to see, threw and hit it bullseye. The square leg umpire, an Australian, jumped 4 feet in the air and still gave him out. And Metis was heard to say, as he returned rather disconcertingly to the pavilion, "Fancy losing like that." West Indian cricketers were sure they had not lost. 10 men were out, weren't they? But we didn't know if we had won either. So we all went off the cricket ground, umpires players, those who were not playing, those who were out, and the extras from the all gathered into one dressing room. We drank there, we drank champagne. Dinner was summoned from the Lennon's Hotel, and we did not leave there until 10:30 that night. Ladies and gentlemen, I suggest to you that there were 24 people who would easily qualify for the Sportsman of the Year award that year. The 22 players and the 2 umpires. After all, Frank Wells, great captain of these, came in and just sank in his chair and never moved for another 4 hours.
Thank you very much.
Well done. I never heard that before. No.
Thanks very much, gentlemen.
Wonderful, right? Fantastic presentation, Graeme. I'm sure all of us in the room probably remember that tight test. I was only a young bloke, but I do remember it. And thinking back on it now, probably just listening to it now, Wes Hall, he's a demon fast bowler, but if you never made it as a fast bowler, I think you might have made it as a comedian. Anyway, I think we've got some singing to do.
Yes, we have.
Yep. Wonderful. All right, well, we'll get set up and then we'll get into it.
Okay, it's good that you can lead the singing.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. The first song we're going to sing is number 40, Stout-Hearted Men. This is a song that was written, the lyrics and music were by Oscar Hammerstein II and Romberg, Sidney Romberg. And it's about the US War of Independence. And I'd like to suggest that those of you who can stand up for this song, because it's a rousing song, and I'd invite you to stand up as we sing. Give me some men who are stout-hearted men, who will fight for the right they adore. Start me with 10 who are stout-hearted men, and I'll soon give you 10,000 more. Shoulder to shoulder and bolder, they grow as they go to the fore. Then there's nothing in the world can hold for Maraland. When stout-hearted men can stick together, man to man. Thank you. And that's Nelson Eddy, of course, who was the singer there. The next one is Waltzing Matilda. 45, so. Once a jolly swagman can't buy a billabong under the shade of a coolabah tree, and he sang as he watched and waited till his billy boiled. You'll come a waltzing Matilda with me, waltzing Matilda, waltzing Matilda. You'll come a waltzing Matilda with me.
and he sang as he watched and waited till his billy boiled. You'll come a waltzing Matilda with me. Down came a jumbuck to drink at the billabong. Up jumped the swagman and grabbed him with glee. He sang as he shoved that jumbuck in his tucker bag. You'll come a waltzing Matilda with me. Waltzing Matilda, waltzing Matilda, you'll come a waltzing Matilda with me. And he sang as he shoved that jumbuck in his tucker bag. You'll come a waltzing Matilda with me. Up rode the squatter, mounted on his thoroughbred. Down came the troopers, 1, 2, 3. Who's that jolly jumbuck you've got in your tucker bag? You'll come a waltzing Matilda with me. Waltzing Matilda, waltzing Matilda, you'll come a waltzing Matilda with me. Who's that jolly jumbuck you've got in your tucker bag? You'll come a waltzing Matilda with me. Up jumped the swagman, sprang into the billabong. You'll never catch me alive, said he, and his ghost may be heard as you pass by that billabong. You'll come a waltzing Matilda with me. Waltzing Matilda, waltzing Matilda, you'll come a waltzing Matilda with me. And his ghost may be heard as you pass by that billabong. You'll come a waltzing Matilda with me. The third one, Botany Bay, and that's Alan Ladd, of course, those of us who remember. The hero of the movie and the villain of the movie is James Mason. Okay, let's go. Oh, sorry, 13, Botany Bay, 13. Farewell to old England forever. Farewell to my runcals as well. Farewell to the well-known Old Bailey, where I used 40 cups such a swell. Singing Toor-a-lie, singing Toor-a-lie, singing Toor-a-lie, I am now bound for Botany Bay. That's it.
Well done, Kevin and Bev. Thank you, Bev, for coming along. Thanks, Bev. Really helps make the day. It's great to have that sing song this morning, so great to see you here. And thanks again to you, Kevin. In a minute, we'll have Members' Corner. We meant to have a bloke called Tony de Bolfo. David Jones is christening him the Scarlet Pimpernel. We seek him there, we seek him here, we seek him everywhere. But we can't seem to find him. Anyway, he's not here.
He got run over by a giant.
Chinaman?
By a Chinaman, we think so. Who knows when we'll ever get him? By a giant. By a giant. Yeah. Okay. All right. Anyway, we're going to hear from our secretary, Colin, this morning. As some of you will know, Colin's got a very interesting background in the medical world of things, and he's going to present to us in a minute in relation to the world of medical imaging and such, as I understand it. So when you're ready, Colin.
Okay, thank you. We'll just have a 2-minute break now.
2 minutes?
Yeah. Yep.
Again?
Medical imaging might be better. When I was about 20, I was playing footy, and I got a knock at the knee at Brooklyn Hospital. No, they just said I got a straight knee. When I was unconscious, I was and I ended up, I walked into John Tolman had a sports store in Burgundy Street, and there was a bloke at the back of his store.
It's funny, I went into the office and I was sitting there talking to the girl and fixing all the flights to come back because I was coming back 3 weeks after the green flag. And they're fixing up the flights and they come back. And the door opens up and in comes William and his daughter. And he's gone up to town, so we're going to town. I said, where the hell are you going? He said, we're going to town. Amazing. It's unbelievable. He was on his trolley, it's good as gold. And I said to the girl, I was talking to she said, you'll go? And she said, he's going away on holidays. I said, he wanted to go to some of our holidays, and we got him in his house for it. Yeah, that's right, exactly. Time's up.
Time's up.
No rush. Now you've done it. No rush. The light's gone off. There you are. It's working. Good idea, Colin.
Okay, can you hear me? Yeah,
Take that blur off your face.
Thanks, everyone.
Don't worry, I can cry. There we are. Right. Look, the time now is 20 past 11. I'll talk for about 40 minutes and then I'll stop. The talk I have is quite a long talk, but I can always finish off on another occasion as Members' Corner or whatever, but it would be a pity to rush. And as I proceed with this talk, you'll understand why. Okay, medical imaging is non-invasive imaging of the body, and doctors take some credit for it, but that's probably not correct. Because the people who really need to take credit are the physicists who have developed the techniques, the development of computer information technology, manufacturing companies, and I draw to your attention what is going to evolve because human beings are looking at the pictures. There's going to be surveillance imaging algorithms so that your breast mammogram or whatever will be screened by a human being who's worked out an algorithm and sorted out where the suspicious areas are. So that's really an evolution of the whole deal. Now, this is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about non-destructive imaging of the body. And for this talk, it's not going to include your skin observation, but that's extremely important for things like melanoma. Obviously, it's an orifice inspection. All holes get looked in. Everybody knows that. It's sometimes joyful and sometimes not. I'm going to comment, I'm not particularly commenting on retinal inspection. That's similar to looking in a hole. I'm not commenting on intrusive endoscopy that really is taking the world by storm. In the mouth, up the anus, they meet in the middle somewhere. Similarly, you can have intrusive ultrasound. I'm not commenting on radiotherapy. That's a big area. Clearly there can be tumours inside, they can be targeted with imaging and specific ablative radiotherapy given. What I'm even talking about is imaging of internal anatomy outside the body, where you can see structure, function, some of the biochemistry of the body, how glucose is used and those sorts of things. You can sometimes characterise the tissues, is it tumour or not. You can actually look at some tissue antigens and some disease characterisation. All right, it's probably been going now for about 130 years since Röntgen in 1895 did experimentation with X-rays and saw that he could profile the internal structures of the body with X-rays. Now, I draw to your attention that light is about a wavelength of about 400 to 700 nanometres. A nanometre is 1,000 millionth of a metre. X-rays are a lot smaller and they're more penetrating, they go through things. There's differential absorption, which is the key of it.
they're also capable of ionisation, so that there can be internal damage. We can administer denser materials, that will outline.
I should stop breaking them bricks.
Excuse me just one moment. Can you hear me with just my voice?
Yeah.
Okay, why don't I do that? Okay. I'll try this once more and then I'll go back to my voice. Can you hear that?
Yep.
Okay, I'll just leave this here so it doesn't make a noise. Look, there's the standard X-ray room. You can see that it's got an X-ray generation machine. And it's got a means of detection. That's either going to be an X-ray film or electronic detecting plate. It can go in this direction when you're standing up, or go downwards when you're having a supine X-ray. This is the general principle. You have the X-ray source here, which is a pin source. It then creates a shadow or profile of the body depending on how the tissues absorb the X-rays. So if it's going through the lungs, there'll be minimal absorption, going through the heart more so. If it's going through nothing, there won't be any absorption, so the X-ray plate will be darkened. Going through bones, essentially none being transmitted through it. So it's dependent upon a point source and dependent upon the X-ray plate being close to the body. The voltage that stimulates electrons are crashing into the tungsten target at 120,000 volts. These electrons are moving very quickly, about a third of the speed of light. Now here's Carl Rongden in 1895. He won the first Nobel Prize in Physics. His third X-ray was that of his wife. He didn't patent it, and that was to his great credit. This here was Marie Curie, or the Skłodowska. That was her Polish name. She won 2 Nobel Prizes. One of them was to do with radiation, but she was applying X-rays for the purposes of, on the front, taking X-rays of soldiers who had been either fractured limbs or had bits of shrapnel inside of them. And she was truly a magnificent person. 2 Nobel Prizes. Here's what modern X-rays can look like on the hand. The detail is exquisite. There's the growth plate in the distal radius. You can infer where the cartilage is by the difference where the bones are opposed. And you can see, though, that the soft tissues aren't well described. Clearly, when X-rays were first discovered, the utilisation for fractures changed orthopaedics and orthopaedic care forever. This was a major advance. Clearly, joints can be applied. This is a person who's got quite marked osteoarthritis in the right hip with then destructive geode formation within the bones. This other hip in 5 to 10 years will suffer the same. The femoral head is not spherical, hence it impinges on the outside margin of the hip. It's a gentleman down here. X-rays, looking at the lungs, clearly an application. Here's the heart profile and the pulmonary vessels, but being an airfield structure, there's not much attenuation. There's breasts here for a lady, and so you get a good idea about stuff that might be in the lungs. And here's an example of a pneumonia in the right middle lobe with a straight profile above. Excellent applications, things like TB pneumonia and lung tumours at a moderately advanced stage. It's also used for mammography, and this is where it's fortunate the breasts are largely fat occupied, so that tumours can highlight because they contain denser materials. In ladies with denser breasts, it can be a problem because the profiling of tumour, which is solid tissue, against a dense background makes them harder to see. But in this case, this spiculated tumour is evident. There are further developments in mammography I can discuss a bit later. This is a rather peculiar X-ray of the skull, and it showed the application of X-rays for metal foreign bodies. This was a prisoner, not from Pentridge, but one of the US prisons. His forte with his mates was banging nails into his head. So he'd get out there with his friends and say, look what I can do. He'd get a hammer and whack nails into his head. He didn't die with the second, but the 10th one was sufficient to kill him, and he ended up with infection in the brain, and that led to his death. But, you know, clearly a good application for metal foreign bodies and a foolish prisoner. Well, that's all good and well. I've mentioned it there. It's great for bones and metal foreign bodies and for tissues where you can highlight one tissue against another, but it's got major problems with soft tissues, and hence CT scanning. you can see that here's a modern CT scanner, and the thing that is different here, it's a donut. So the person goes into the donuts, and X-rays are fired at the person from all directions. So it's fired from all directions and captured from all directions. And the principles of CT scanning are quite different to that of just a simple X-ray. And I've got this illustration here for you. Here's just an example of a metal foreign body or a metal object in the field of view. If you fire X-rays like this, the X-rays will come along and darken the plate where there's no impingement of the metal. So you get a profile something like this. Similarly, if you fire them from this direction, you get a profile like this. What Hounsford and others got their Nobel Prize for was the following. It's called back projection. Knowing that's the pattern of absorption, if you fire, say, light through this profile, you get a profile that predominantly is a line like this, and from the other direction, predominantly a line like that. You put that together, you can work out the densest things in the middle. Clearly, using this model with just two projections, you get a square object. But if you take multiple projections, if you have an imaging or mathematical algorithm that corrects for this detail that isn't part of the original anatomy, you can come up with very good imaging. And so this is what, say, a CT scan looks like on soft tissue attenuation, where the slice goes from the top of the body through to about the upper chest. And so clearly now we have things like the thyroid, we have the musculature of the chest, the pectoral muscles anteriorly, muscles around the shoulder, a profile of the shoulder detail. Here's the vasculature, here's the aorta, and the vasculature within the mediastinum. But on this window, the lungs aren't particularly well shown. But this really revolutionised the teaching and understanding of anatomy. If you fiddle the dial, as one can when you're fiddling with your digital imaging, you can highlight different tissues. So when I fiddle with, it's the same X-ray, or same CT sequence, but when I fiddle with the dials, I can get up lung windows now. So I can now, in great detail, look at lung tissues and what might be there. Pneumonia, tumour, inflammation of other sort, and so on. It really was a major development. You can go into the abdomen, and you can see here we've injected iodized contrast, which highlights some of the soft tissues, particularly those containing arteries and veins. So clearly here's a view of the heart. It's the left ventricle, right atrium. A little bit of the left atrium here, and I'll come back to that. Given that we've given contrast, that highlights the tissues that are quite vascular. So here's both kidneys, but they've got these deficits in them. Here's the spleen over here in the left upper quadrant, and you can see that's got a deficit in it. This has come from emboli from the left atrium, and it's blocked off segmental supply to the kidneys. With modern imaging, you can, as well as the cross-sectional image in terms of the axial plane, you can reconstruct it because the pixels and voxels are quite small. So I can say, what plane do I want? Axial plane or a coronal plane? It's another development in how we might look at pictures. This is not the same person, but it shows us what we've discovered in the brain. Blood contains hemoglobin and it's denser than the adjacent tissues. So here's some anatomy of the brain. The brain's in two halves, and then it has the cerebellum. Here's the ventricles, but this ventricle is being squashed by a substantial hemorrhage within the substance of the right hemisphere. This is subarachnoid hemorrhage. Blood vessels around the brain, one of them's burst, often from a aneurysm, and there's extensive blood in the subarachnoid space. And so there's a whole pattern of disease in the brain, particularly due to hemorrhage, that can be now highlighted. I'm just going through a range of the investigations and how they've evolved, and you all probably have had ultrasound, and it's really, again, another different but unique way of imaging internally the body. Clearly animals use ultrasound or high frequency sound, like bats fly without crashing into things in the cave, and animals, fish swimming in the ocean and so on, can also, the dolphins can work out where things are using high frequency sound transmission through water. Australia, in this area of imaging with ultrasound, had, with CSIRO, fairly substantial development from 1959 onward. About 1956, there was obstetric ultrasound, initially starting out in a very crude way, and not a lot of pictures, but just we knew that something was wrong. But then, in terms of clinical imaging, it was 1962 onwards, and this was really a major change in obstetric care. How many babies are there, what's their presentation, where's the placenta? All this stuff was now known to the obstetrician. The principles of this is different. It relates to the velocity of sound, and in water the sound velocity is about 1500 metres per second. In air it's slower, and in denser tissues it has a higher velocity. You're probably aware that when wave propagates from one medium to another, if there's a difference of flow you can get reflection. And it's just reflection that's the key point in ultrasound. If the sound isn't transmitted through the tissues, it's also no good because you can't see beyond it. Hence, looking at the brain through the skull is limited, and if you have a whole lot of bowel gas, you can't see the structures deeper. This is the principle, and here's a transducer. You've all probably had ultrasounds, you know they put some oil on you, or gel, that permits transmission that's efficient between the transducer and the skin. And it works on the basis that there's a number of elements to the transducer, and it tends to fire a beam of ultrasound. And it fires them out in sequence, as I've shown here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, the number of components. It fires out a beam, and then it listens to the returning echo. If it hits, say, this anterior aspect of the liver, there's an echo point here. If it gets the back part, there's another echo point. It hits the kidney down here, another echo point. And it's the difference in time from when a pulse is sent out to when it's received that helps construct the image up here. So it's really tracking ultrasound pulses that go through the body. The pulses are quite discrete, and you do one at a time as you're going along. So there's lots of very short pulses that end up giving rise to the image. And here's the example. Here's an early pregnancy with a yolk sac. You can actually look at differences due to movement, and here's the heart of this early pregnancy. And there's it's a real plethora of imaging now. In the, say, this would be about a 32-week ultrasound, you actually see the baby put the hand into the mouth, you can work out the sex of the baby, you actually see fetal breathing movements for the baby, and the ultrasound people doing it now have a major headache. They have to tell the referring doctor and the mum with the baby how many fingers it has. It has to in detail analyse the cardiovascular structures to make sure there's nothing abnormal, to make sure that the kidneys are normal, blah, 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 blah. It's like looking at the whole body in 20 minutes. It's a very difficult task. Okay, here's obviously a gallstone in the gallbladder. We've gone through the skin here, and you can see shadowing because this attenuates or stops further propagation of the ultrasound through it. Well, you thought that was interesting, and another use of our knowledge of physical things to get pictures inside the body. This is just about magic. It's the closest thing we have in medical imaging to magic. It's magnetic resonance imaging. This works in a very interesting way, and the physics is most demanding. You're aware of the atomic nature of the world, where you have the nucleus and electrons around it. Electrons actually are responsible for bondage between one structure and another, and really the chemical nature of the world. But the nucleus has its own story. You know that you can have atom bombs and all those sorts of things from nuclear physics. But the nuclei have generally, they have lots of things in them, but simply described it can be protons and neutrons. And even though neutrons don't have a charge, they have a magnetic moment, and so does a proton. And generally, if you're describing the atomic structure, you call the middle bit the nucleon. It's the combination of nuclei, of the neutron and the protons. And if that happens to be an odd number, there's an unpaired magnetic moment. And so things like water, which contains hydrogen, just one hydrogen for most water, that has a magnetic property. Most magnetism is due to the behaviour of the electron cloud around molecules and atoms. There's a weaker magnetic moment related to the nuclei. And so that water has a magnetic property due to the protons within it. And so does fat containing protons. So these two structures in particular have discrete magnetic moments. This was originally worked up in about the 30s using to work out chemical bondage. It was just done with specimens in a test tube. And to convert this sort of imaging, this sort of technology to imaging has been a major development in the 80s, 90s and thereafter. So what I'm talking about here is that we have protons coming from, which is the charged bit in a nucleus. They're unpaired and they have a weak magnetic signal. To detect that magnetic signal, you need to put them in a very strong magnetic field so that they tend to gyrate. So if you've got a magnetic aspect like this and it's spinning, if you put a magnetic moment to it, it will align up a bit as best it can and then gyrate like a top. So that the sort of magnetic fields we use for MRI, which is 1 Tesla, about 3 Tesla. Now, 1 Tesla is 10,000 Gauss. That's 10,000 times the magnetic strength of the Earth. So if you go into this environment and have something metallic, it'll be pulled away from you in most violent fashion. So this is a unique environment. There are many books on how it all works, but that's as much as you're getting today. So, nuclei, unpaired protons, magnetic moment, high, extremely high magnetic field that really isn't found anywhere on Earth except in an MRI machine or alternatively in things like aluminium smelters that have such high current flows, yet high magnetic fields. This is what it looks like, and you can see that it's not too dissimilar to the CT, except that it's bigger, it's longer. And you go in there and you're obviously checked out, you don't have any metal on you or any electronic stuff that will be wrecked by the high magnetic field. And it makes all sort of groaning noises in there. And that's because the metal framework in here is influenced by the changing magnetic fields. These are the pictures. Wow, the sun has come up on the brain, has it not? Here's someone's eye. Here, the eye's here. But look how the brain is now shown. Here's the white matter showing a whiter colour than the cortex. The detail is exquisite. Here's the top bit of the cerebellum. Here's the brain stem in here. Here's some arteries. Here's the carotid arteries here, and here's the basilar artery and the posterior cerebral arteries at the top. Utterly exquisite. Note though, the bones, because they contain calcium, don't have high protons, hence they are a void. And what we're looking in the middle here is the bone marrow in the bone, and that's fat in the scalp. What pathology? Here's a person who's had a large right-sided cerebral infarct with swelling of the brain. This is a CT scan done in now the sagittal plane, and you can see the bone details pretty well shown, but we can't see the marrow portions of bone so well, nor on this window or other windows can we show the spinal cord. But look what the MRI machine does. They have all different imaging sequences. This is a T2 sequence that's showing up the fluid, that's the CSF space around the brain, around the spinal cord, and fat. And now we're highlighting, here's the bit of the brainstem here, bottom bit of the cerebellum, and so on. And here we have the spinal cord. Wow, this is fantastic anatomy. Here we have blobs in the bone. This was from bone metastases. Were the bone metastases causing problem with the spine? No, it's the disc. This person's got disc disease that's causing this protuberance at this point. It's exquisite what we can now see. Okay, it's pretty fashionable now to have an anterior cruciate ligament disruption. Here's a view in the sagittal plane as I'm slicing with a big knife. Here's the lower bit of the femur, top bit of the tibia, patella. Here's the cartilage of the patella, fat in the ground of the patella. Here's the cartilage up here. And this is the anterior cruciate ligament here. If this is pushed forwards, then this gets disrupted. Here's the posterior cruciate ligament. And here's one that's disrupted, slightly different imaging sequence, and that's blood in and around the knee. Okay, so we've gone through profiling things with an X-ray from Carl Longan. We've spoken a little bit about developing that technology with CT, different technology with ultrasound, looking at sound. What happens if the radiation or whatever is inside the person? This is the nuclear medicine domain, and this came out of the use of iodine. Most iodine we ingest goes into the thyroid, and what you don't ingest or absorb is passed out in urine. So the use of radioactive iodine for treating overactive thyroiditis has been well known for quite a time. But then you can get pictures knowing that the iodine or whatever isotope you have that's similar to iodine will go to the thyroid. So this technology has been evolved to get pictures of the body and its organs and its function by injecting them with radioactive materials. That's evolved to positron emission tomography, which is another radioactive source. Positrons, as you may or may not know, are antimatter, and we normally have electrons and neutrons and all those sorts of things. But after Einstein and others looked at it all, they said, well, look, why don't we have antimatter? So that, well, I was using positrons for purposes of diagnosis. Cyclotron produced fluorine-18 decays to give up positrons. Wow. The positrons have a short path length in the body, hit an electron, and then give radiation in two separate directions, opposed. Right, so just summarising what nuclear medicine is about, it's an internal radiation source for imaging and sometimes for treatment. The gamma rays come from nuclei and X-rays come from electron reorganisation, but they're similar in properties. So this is how nuclear medicine works. The radioactive material, due to the fact that it's hooked up to some other molecule, might target the liver. That's commonly called a colloid. The liver likes to absorb colloidal junk. So this is a trace that's been injected into the liver. Gamma cameras are different in that you can't profile it. You've got to take a picture as a lens might take in a camera. But because the radiation is so penetrating, you can't use a lens structure, you use a collimator. So only X-rays or gamma rays coming in this direction go in. We have a thicker iodide crystal source and a means of detection to get a picture something like that. Okay, often the pictures aren't of great detail, but they show you something different. They show you a function of the body. This is a dog that I sliced up with a diamond-tipped microtome. We inject them with the bone tracer. You can see that the bone tracer isn't really outlining the cortical portions of bone, but the growing parts of bone that are in the trabecular structure of the bone. So really we understand now a bit of function and growth. If you inject stuff that's excreted or by the kidney, you can then work out and quantitate how much kidney function there is. These are pictures taken over a period of about 8 minutes, and you can see the left kidney's got a certain degree of function that we didn't know beforehand, because this left kidney had a large calculus in it. We didn't know whether to take the kidney out or try and take out the stone and restore some function. It had sufficient function to deserve removal of the stone and not take out the entire kidney. This is positron emission tomography. This is fancy stuff, and it relies, the most commonly one is fluorodeoxyglucose, and this is taken up as glucose is by the body, so that the brain mainly uses glucose for its function. It takes up about 20% of the body's circulation. So this is the brain that's shown up when we inject fluorodeoxyglucose. One of the things I was doing when I was working with this was we had the patients there and they were watching telly. Well, I could see who's watching telly by seeing whether that part of the brain that analyses pictures was highlighting. So those who are watching telly, that part of the brain was lighting up. Very interesting. You can do various other studies, and there's other ways of doing it. When people are thinking of music, the musical bit lights up and so on. This is functional imaging, but in this person here who's got this mass in the left side of chest, this is an invasive chest tumour, and these blobby bits down here represent spread, and this is a normal excretion of glucose. So you've got to understand a bit of normal anatomy and function. I'll probably stop today, as this is my last picture just showing imaging alone. I can come back and talk about radiation exposure and risks, and I can talk a bit more about other things, but this is the final one. This is a picture of me. This is my right macula. The eye works a bit like this. It's got the anterior chamber with fluid in it, clear fluid. It's got gel type material in the main chamber, and it's got the optic nerve, and here it's got the macula, which has finest vision, and it's got rods. So it's the finest vision of the eye and colour vision. And the macula works a bit like this. This is the detecting frame, called the cones, called the rods, I should say, the macula. And then the nerves come out of that, and they spread around. So the nerves that exit the detection of light don't actually impinge light coming in. So the macula's thinned out at this, the retina's thinned out here. That's called the fovea. But the exquisite nature of this is that this point on a histological picture, that's 0.1 of a millimetre. This is 0.1 of a millimetre, that's 0.1 of a millimetre. With this technology, we can show nerve layers in the retina. And this is a non-invasive way of showing that with exquisite resolution. This is, if you're going to have fancy ophthalmology, this is what they do to you. And it operates that you have light being shone in the eye. It's ultra it's at the infrared spectrum, and they use an interference pattern with half the light transmitted under one sort of interferometer and the other half that goes in here and is reflected back. This is another application of this sort of fancy physics and imaging technology. I'll stop there because that's a fair bit of information to give to you. I provided some illustrations, and as I said earlier, the doctors take some credit and are very proud of what they can do with it, but the people who really made the major contribution here are the physicists, the industry, and those who use it. So thank you for your time.
And for all those not paying attention, I can see the bloke down there didn't light up. You're really lit up. Bev's lit up. Very good, Bev. What a wonderful presentation, Colin. For someone that's not familiar with this sort of work whatsoever, except you hear in pubs and clubs that they had an MRI or an ACL or one thing or another, it really brings home what this, how medical imaging has evolved, and it's fascinating stuff, certainly for me, and I guess for the forensic people in the room, doctors and such. It bring back to the forefront of your mind different things that you've been well exposed to in the developments maybe since you've retired and such. But I would love to have you come back and finish this presentation at some stage, Colin. Wonderful, mate. So just again, well, thank you very much. And also, let's not forget, there's a reason we can get you back. So on behalf of the club, Colin, thank you, mate. Wonderful, mate. Unless there's any other items of general business, people want to raise anything, we can almost go to lunch, I suppose. Anything anybody want to raise from the floor, or no?
Well, next month, Mr. President, assuming she turns up, but I'm sure she will, we've got a lady who's very active in providing support for families in the Philippines.
Yep.
So she's going to come along and tell us about her work with families in the Philippines, and it'll be a PowerPoint presentation. So
we'll look forward to that. I think the name's Barbara Gafer.
Yes, that's it. Gail Gafer.
Gail.
Yeah. And then hopefully, I've got to confirm this up, but for September, hopefully, I've got someone from Beyond Blue coming along who's going to talk to us, and I think on the basis of their own experience of mental health issues for young people.
Yeah.
And I approached Beyond Blue on the basis that, look, I don't think we'd be terribly interested in hearing about mental health issues for old people, but we've all got grandchildren, etc., and there's clearly a lot of issues going on with respect to mental health challenges for young people. So we'd be interested in hearing about what they are. So I'll keep you posted, but hopefully that'll be right for September.
Terrific. Thanks, David. All right, well, everybody, thank you for your attendance this morning, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll conclude our meeting this morning on that basis.